So now that more time has passed since Shadow of the Erdtree released, I have been able to spend more time fighting the new bosses and getting a better understanding of them, and now I feel I have fought them thoroughly enough to make a boss ranking for Elden Ring. This will be an all remembrance, base game and DLC ranking, and I will also be putting them into a tier list, in which they will also be ranked accordingly in each tier. Of course, this is my own personal ranking on things like spectacle, mechanics, fairness, which will come up often in the DLC bosses, arena, and whatever else may affect the fight. Oh, and I will also be including Bale in this ranking, as he is more of a remembrance boss than most in the game anyway. But without further delay, let's get into my least favourite remembrance boss in Elden Ring. The Regal Ancestor Spirit looks very nice aesthetically. I like the arena with the spectral animals, and the theme is very fitting. That is kinda where my praise ends though. The boss is very luck dependent. The Ancestor Spirit loves teleporting or flying away and can do this constantly through the fight. It has very few melee attacks and can also heal a significant amount of health multiple times throughout the fight. The fight is not difficult in any way, but is incredibly tedious. You can spend minutes just chasing after it, hoping to get an attack off before it teleports away again. Or if you get good RNG, this fight can be over in a matter of seconds. The Ancestor Spirit doesn't have much health, and when you are most likely to fight it during your playthrough, you will be doing a lot of damage. Overall, the Ancestor Spirit is a very disappointing boss that has little to no positives, putting it first in the D tier. Meter Mother of Fingers is another boss similar to the Ancestor Spirit, where this can be a very quick or slow fight. Again, Meter has a few melee attacks, not as much health, and can constantly be doing some attack, which punishes aggression. It's another boss that looks really cool and has a unique arena, but the fight is just not good enough. The second phase has some new laser attacks, but the massive AoE it does, I'm not entirely sure how you dodge the first laser beam. You can't roll it, and I haven't been able to outrun it either. The boss is more annoying than anything else. The melee attacks are quite fun, but that's if Meter even does them. At least it slightly makes up for it with a smaller health bar, and it does stagger fairly quickly, but overall is not enough for me to put it higher than the D tier. Estelle is up there with one of the coolest bosses in Elden Ring. The arena and his design are incredible, but as is a theme with a lot of Elden Ring's bosses, spectacle takes priority over mechanics. Estelle is a very average boss. The attacks are fine, although most of them you can just move out of the way of, you don't even need to roll them. His second phase has some AoEs which are also fine. They look really cool and are fair, but that is kinda all that can be said really. Estelle is just an average fight which gets a bit more leeway due to the great design, but with that Estelle goes into the C tier. And continuing the trend with aesthetically pleasing fights but lackluster mechanics is Lich Dragon Fortisax. Fortisax is one of the cooler bosses in the game, another boss with a great design and cool arena, but the engagement just isn't there. For the first half of the fight, he will just do a few lightning attacks which are easily avoided while you can attack his legs. I like the lightning that tracks you so you can't just spam in between his attacks, but it does get obnoxious. The second phase, he has a few new attacks and a cool huge attack where he flies into the air and strikes down with this lightning bolt, but that's about all he does. These bosses look great and all, but the fight is really boring. There's a lot of downtime with Fortisax where you are free to attack, having to dodge a lightning strike every 5 or so seconds. The spectacle is there for sure, but from a gameplay perspective, Fortisax is another underwhelming boss. Fortisax goes into C tier. Oh look, another spectacle boss. Nothing new can really be said. Fire Giant looks incredible, but the fight is really bad. Since you have to attack his feet, it is a struggle to see what move he is about to do, and with the drastic increase in difficulty at the mountaintop of giants, some attacks can potentially one-shot you. His phase transition is great, revealing the massive eye on his chest, but the second phase is more of the same. He now does a lot more melee attacks like big slams that are your best chance to do the most damage. He also loves to roll away in this phase and loves shooting fireballs or spawning these fire orbs. Fire Giant is another disappointment mechanically, where it's more of a chore than anything else despite the great appearance. Fire Giant in C tier. Renala is a really average boss. Her first phase was pretty cool the first time playing, attacking the free glowing schoolgirls while they can throw books and roast you with fire, but every time after is just a tedious delay until the actual fight. Renala's main issue is she has way too little health. Her second phase is pretty fun with her magic attacks, and she's also able to summon in wolves, a bloodhound knight or a drake, but depending on when you fight her you may not even see most of her attacks. She has a laughable health bar and staggers very easily, so you can most likely just DPS for the fight instead of learning any of her moveset. Overall, a decent enough fight that unfortunately just leaves you wanting more. Renala also goes into the C tier. The Erdtree avatar is quite hard to rank. There's something about it that I just don't enjoy. Again, the boss looks really cool, but the fight is nothing special. Its attacks are quite fun though, and fair as well, so the fight isn't anything too bad. I like how the head takes significantly more damage, so you are more likely to be in front of the boss, whereas if you are at its base, more of the attacks miss you, but you will also do less damage. After you get through the first phase, the boss comes out the ground and has a whole new health bar, with a bigger health bar than the first phase. The second phase is the same, except it has 3 dash attacks at the start of the phase, but once you get through the second health bar, it spawns a third time, and this time has a massive AoE that has a follow-up the moment after the explosion. It can then do 3 explosions in a row, and each one has a follow-up, so it does get a bit excessive, but was still fun enough. Overall, the Erdtree avatar is a fine boss. There's nothing too bad, but nothing great either, putting it into the B tier. I want to enjoy the Putrescent Knight more than I do. Mechanically, I don't think there is any major problems with it. The attacks are fair, combos are fun, and a unique second phase make it a really good fight. I think my main issue, and this does affect most DLC bosses, is that there isn't enough downtime after its attacks. Whenever you think there is a punish window, it'll either go into a whole new combo, run away, or do a follow-up attack. It feels like you are dodging attacks for so long to sometimes not even have enough time to get a single attack in yourself. I really like his attack where he jumps off his horse and does his big spinning jump, then the horse spawns and you roll that and immediately after have to dodge his attack. I also love the second phase where he does his big frostbite AoE, where jumping is the best way to avoid damage. It changes up the fight and almost forces you to jump instead of rolling. Overall, it's a good fight. It was a bit underwhelming coming through the Stone Fissure and dropping down into this cool arena to be greeted by the Putrescent Knight, but the boss was fine enough. The Putrescent Knight goes into B tier. The Divine Beast dancing lying is a really frustrating fight. I'm very conflicted as it is a very bipolar boss. Some of the attacks are fine and even really fun, especially in the first phase, but in the second phase when he starts adding elemental damage is when the fight takes a turn for the worst. I really dislike the lightning phase as after every attack there is now a lightning AoE that covers a pretty sizable area around him, making punish windows almost non-existent. There is also a lot going on the screen, making it hard to even see what is going on half the time. It is also similar in the Frost phase, where attacks now have a Frostbite AoE afterwards, and he also has this attack in all phases where he spins around doing a big AoE and it just feels over the top. The boss looks really cool and I enjoy the first phase, but I think it just gets a bit excessive with its attacks and visual clutter, which puts the boss a bit lower down for me. The Divine Beast Dancing Lion goes into the B tier. Morgott has grown on me recently. I've always enjoyed Morgott, but do still dislike some combos where they feel a bit too long, or how he can just follow up quickly with a whole new combo. I had a much better time light rolling and felt at times like light rolling was the only way to avoid some attacks. Morgott is an improvement over Margit and has new finishers to his combos and a few different moves entirely, and is also a lot more aggressive than Margit. Positioning is really important in this fight, as there's some attacks where either running around or just outspacing entirely will work better than just trying to roll everything. Morgott is an enjoyable boss and is next in the B tier. Romina is a pretty good boss. I like her combos as they are well telegraphed and the boss itself looks really cool. I enjoy the combination of her weapon and scorpion attacks, and her aggression is just right. She also has a butterfly AoE in the second phase where she covers most of the arena with them, and they are a really cool attack. I would like it more if she had a bit more health, as my first playthrough I kinda just tanked through her as she is another boss that staggers easily as well as not having much health. herself, and even now I haven't really got the fight down, but she dies pretty easily anyway. But other than that, Romana is a good boss mechanically and visually, putting her into the B tier. Finding where to put Radahn in this ranking was pretty difficult. There is a lot to enjoy about Radahn, but there is also a lot of not so enjoyable things. Straight away, I don't like that Radahn has been reused. Sure, there's lower justification, but it does feel a bit cheap having the final boss of a DLC be an albeit very different kind of fight to the base game, but still the same exact character. So first phase Radahn is actually really great. The attacks are really fun, they are fair, and there are different mix-ups to his combos which make it more engaging. Although he has one combo that is just plain terrible. He does 2 quick slashes, then one final one together where if you get caught during one of the swings, you will always be stun locked for the rest of the combo. And a lot of the time this will do enough damage to kill you. And he can pull this move out of nowhere, and no matter where you roll during the first swing, you will get caught during the second and final swings. Now sure, you can avoid it by being positioned very specifically, but even then it won't be consistent, so it's overall a terrible move that can just end an attempt in a second. Then we have the second phase where everything jumps to an absurd level. Every swing now has a follow-up AoE that explodes. You can get easily stun locked in like 4 attacks in a very short amount of time, and with Miquella's hair covering his entire body, it can be difficult to even see what combo he is doing. He also has many clone attacks where he will attack multiple times as a clone, then end with a real attack. Thankfully the clones either do like 1 HP worth of damage or none at all, but you just get staggered the whole time and then have to avoid the final one. He also has a crazy amount of health, but also dishes out a crazy amount. Radahn is best described as overtuned. Like, he is just too much. Sure, everyone is talking about him and the fight is really difficult, but this is not the difficulty I personally like or want in these games, and fights like Radahn and a few other DLC ones are a genuine concern for the future of these games. Radahn has some really great moves and mechanics that just get overshadowed by these few things that are just excessive. So with that, Radahn goes into the B tier. It's a shame that Radagon and Elden Beast have to be put together, as Radagon is one of the best fights in the game. The opening cinematic when he pulls the hammer out and the main theme kicks in is still to this day one of the best moments in any of FromSoft's games. The fight is also great mechanically. Radagon is very quick and has got close and ranged attacks. In his second phase he starts teleporting around and adding different moves into his combos. Radagon is a really satisfying fight and is a real shame that he is connected to the Elden Beast. The Elden Beast has a really great design and I like the arena, but the fight itself is very underwhelming. A lot of time is spent chasing after it and the boss very sporadically does, well, anything really. Sometimes it will attack, other times just run away again, or do countless AoE attacks. It's a very boring fight and just running after it the whole time was very annoying. However, they did recently allow you to use Torrent in the Elden Beast fight, and does that solve the problems we all thought it would? Not really, to be honest. It does make chasing it around not as tedious, and it is very useful for, say, the Elden Stars attack. However, pretty much every other attack is just fine dodging or outrunning on foot, especially since there are no iframes on Torrent. So let's say you get the Elden Stars attack while on Torrent, and then he does his big projectile attack. You are done for, as you'll need to get off Torrent to roll these attacks anyway. The fight is better with Torrent and should have been that way from the beginning, but it doesn't make the actual fight any better, just more bearable. Radagon and the Elden Beast go into the B tier. Rykard is a great combination of spectacle and mechanics. Rykard looks amazing and the arena is great, but the fight itself is also really good. It is a gimmick style fight similar to Yorm from Dark Souls 3, but has been improved upon here. The first phase against the Serpent is good, although he has these 2 attacks that are borderline unfair. I have never found a way to consistently roll the Poison Spit attack. Sometimes I have managed, but most of the times you just can't. And the attack where he slams into the ground and pulls up for a big AoE, you can't roll it, you can't jump it, so I'm unsure exactly what you're meant to do. Sure, I bet you can use an Ash of War like Bloodhound Step or something, but that should obviously not be necessary. The phase transition cutscene is really cool, and now Rykard has sword attacks added to his arsenal. He has these new attacks where he can spawn skulls that leave an explosive trail, or a big storm of them that chase you around, but you can stagger Rykard out of these devastating attacks with the Serpent Hunter's Ash of War. Overall, Rykard is a really good fight for what it is. There's a gimmick with the Serpent Hunter, but the fight is engaging enough on its own to make it enjoyable in itself. Rykard is the first boss in the A tier. Gaius is a really underrated boss. At the start I wasn't too keen on him either and actually had him in the B tier, but I've started to enjoy the fight a lot more recently. He starts off with this charge attack, which is really bad though. The dodge timing is incredibly precise and most of the time it will hit you. The best way I avoid it now is I just go on Torrent and wait until he does an attack out of it, then you can start the fight proper. You can use Torrent the whole time, but I don't think it is worth it since you don't have the iframes. He has a lot of follow-up attacks that need to be dodged very precisely. His second phase introduces gravity attacks, which are fine. I don't really like the big AoE attack he does, as the timing is very tricky to get down since it's so delayed, but otherwise Gaius is a really solid fight and really fun mechanically. Gaius goes in A tier. Godric is basically the prime example of a FromSoft boss. He has a really great design, fair attacks, different mix-ups like grabs and AoEs, and a cool second phase that just adds to the fight and doesn't change it entirely. Godric is the standard for great boss design. All his attacks are fun and fair. The second phase introduces some fire attacks from the dragon on his arm, but doesn't change anything too drastically. Godric is just a really great boss and the best first main boss to have. Of course there are cooler bosses or more engaging ones, but as a whole Godric is just great and deserves a place in the A tier. Malenia, the most iconic boss for better or worse. Malenia is also a boss that I have more appreciation for recently rather than closer to release. Her first phase is really good and well balanced as she does a lot of damage and has lifesteal, but also doesn't have that much health herself and staggers very easily. Her attacks are fine, I like her combos and her switch up attacks like the grab and the thrust, but then of course she pulls out Waterfill, and still to this day is the worst attack FromSoft have ever done. She pulls this out at around like 75% health and jumps in the air for a second or two, then goes crazy. If you are remotely close to her, there is no way to avoid it. The second and third bursts can be dodged just fine, but the first one is near impossible at close range. Yeah, I've seen people do it by like circling around her and rolling it, but that is way too professional for myself or any other average player to consistently pull off. It is just an incredibly obnoxious attack where you just accept death if she pulls it out when you are next to her. Her second phase adds new finishers to her combos that spawn a Scarlet Rot burst, which was really good and changed up the fight. She can do Waterfill again with Scarlet Rot damage now because it wasn't excessive enough already, but she also has a new clone attack where she spawns multiple clones that cover most of the arena, and this is another attack where you just have to run away and pray. Malenia is a really good boss that gets overshadowed by a few mechanics that are really unfair. To an extent I like how it's a bit different and she wouldn't be as iconic without it, but absolutely should not continue into the future games. Malenia is in A tier. I'm not too sure what the general consensus is on Placidusax, as I feel most players wouldn't have him this high up, and I will admit I do have a bias for him, but I also acknowledge many of his flaws. Straight away, Placidusax is one of the best looking bosses in the game. I love everything about his design, and I love the arena with all the lightning and tornadoes. The first phase is very boring, however. He spawns lightning in sections, then does a few fire or claw attacks. It's nothing special, but is just there to have something until the second phase. He goes into the air, then vanishes, and you are searching around the arena and see this lightning cloud, and he comes out of it and slams down into the arena. It is so goddamn cool. He then starts teleporting and doing more lightning attacks, and they are fine. They do have a small dodge window, but I don't mind it. Then when you get him low enough, he will fly away and do the same slam attack from the clouds, but then pulls out the Midir laser attack, which does devastating damage. Placidusax is a very dull fight. He does an attack or two, then you smack him for a bit, rinse and repeat. I just love the design so much. The arena is so cool and he is an incredible spectacle. Also the run back is atrocious, takes minutes just to do another attempt, but Placidusax holds a special place in my heart. Although the fight is rather pathetic, his design makes up for it to me, putting Placidusax in the A tier. There's not too much to say about Godfrey. It's kinda similar to Godric, where it's just a very solid fight overall. I just think the spectacle is better with Godfrey. His attacks in the first phase are really fun and fair. It's a shame it's pretty much just Goldfrey again, with no real changes, but the fight is still fun regardless. His second phase as Horaloo is really cool. The design is great and he gets really aggressive and has these big wrestling moves where he just launches you into the air. You spend most of the time running away waiting for a chance to attack, as he doesn't have normal combos where you have punish windows, but I enjoyed the unique aspect of it. Overall, Godfrey is a really enjoyable fight. Nothing too amazing mechanically, but it's just really fun and has a great spectacle. Godfrey goes into A tier. Rolana is a really enjoyable fight. Her moveset is really fun, although my biggest problem is that her swings are very sporadic and go in loads of different directions, so I struggle with rolling some of her attacks. Sometimes it's not as simple as roll to the side or backwards, as she is swinging everywhere, so a few of her combos are a bit cheesy, but I'm sure players better than myself have found ways to dodge them. A lot of her attacks have a very quick follow-up, making roll timing and positioning very important. It's kinda similar to Gale, where in his second phase his cape is a follow-up attack, so you have to roll way more precisely. Her second phase introduces fire and magic attacks. She has a big fire AoE or a 5-hit magic combo. She also has a triple moon attack that will pretty much kill you if you are caught in it, but jumping it is very easy anyway. Rolana is another boss who took a while for me to appreciate. I didn't really like her at the beginning, thinking her combos were too much and were too constant, but now I think she is easily one of the better bosses in the game, and mechanically one of the most enjoyable. Rolana is an A tier. Bale for me is one of the more overrated bosses in the game, and it is a real shame because there is so much to love about him and probably should be a contender for the best boss in the whole game. I'll go over what I do like first. Bale is another boss that looks absolutely amazing. His design is great, the arena is great, and I love how you reach him by climbing up this huge mountain with all the lightning and all the weather effects. Bale mechanically is also really good. His moves are mostly fair and has a good range of attacks. His phase transition is one of the coolest in the game, and his second phase takes everything up a notch and adds delayed explosions to most attacks. My problems with Bale though are that, for one, his fire breath is so inconsistent. You run to the side of it and are out of the way, but sometimes a random bolt will just hit you. It just feels completely unfair. And I think the fire projects off the sides of the arena, so it will bounce off the walls and hit you, which is really frustrating. Bale also hits incredibly hard, which is a staple in the DLC, but I don't mind it all too much with Bale, as a boss like him should be doing insane damage. But my biggest problem is how anti-engagement he is. Bale is constantly doing some combo or in the air doing an AoE or just something that doesn't allow the player time to even reach him, let alone get an attack in. There's very little downtime, giving the player a moment to do some damage. Like, he is constantly in some 15-second long combo and can go straight into another one right out of it. He also has a big Medivh laser kind of attack, yet even if you dodge it all, when you finally run to him, he's out of the cooldown period and is doing another attack again. When Medivh did his laser attack, he had some downtime for the player to punish. After dodging a massive attack, that would leave Medivh stunned for a while afterwards. And Bale also has a combo where he shoots fire at his feet, so he's actively punishing players for being aggressive. Bale is just way too over the top. As I said, the mechanics are fine. I rarely have any issues with any of his actual moves, but there is just little to no punish windows on any of his attacks. You are just waiting for your chance, but that chance is gone in a second. Bale is easily one of the best designed bosses in the game, but gets ruined for me by not being an actual fight, but just waiting for your one chance every 30 seconds to get one attack in. Bale frustrates me more than anything, as it is a really great boss, but just a few little things put him further down for me. With all that said though, Bale definitely goes into the A tier. Midra is one of the best bosses mechanically. He has arguably the best boss moveset in the game. His attacks are all really fair and really fun to dodge. He has cool mix-ups with the madness attacks, and it's just a really great fight overall. The only real downside is that he just doesn't have a lot of health. This is easily one of the most satisfying bosses in the entire game, and one of the more fun bosses they have designed. There's really no flaws with him. I think the moveset is a bit limited, and the spectacle isn't too crazy, although the design is really sick. The fight would need something more to be placed higher, but for what it is a great and really fantastic fight, putting Midra top of A tier. And starting off the S tier is General Radahn. Radahn is debatably the most unique Souls boss we've ever had. The lead up with the Radahn festival was really cool and set up the boss really well. Then in the fight where you have this massive arena and can use torrent and Radahn is absolutely massive, it is a really great spectacle. You can also summon multiple people to help you take on Radahn, and for the story reasons it's just so good. Radahn is also really good mechanically. His combos are great, although I don't really like the amount of delayed attacks he has, but the fight is great mounted or not and is well balanced for both. His phase transition is amazing and absolutely up there with the best spectacle in the series. He comes crashing into the arena in this massive fireball. His second phase adds gravity attacks to his arsenal and can be dodged by either rolling or using torrent. Radahn is the best example of combat on torrent, and the fight is also just fine on foot. The spectacle and everything surrounding Radahn is also amazing, making Radahn an S tier boss. Malekith is kinda similar to Placidusax, where I wouldn't really have him this high based off just the fight alone, but I love the design so much. The Beast Clergyman in the first phase is okay, it's not horrible but not great, but the second phase with Malekith is really cool. He starts jumping around the arena and shooting these projectiles and just flipping all over the place. It looks great visually. Mechanically he is also really fun. His moveset is really good. He has a lot of delayed AoEs with slightly different timing, which are really hard to get down, and he also has this big frenzy blade attack which will almost one-shot you. His attacks in the second phase also drain your health and decrease your overall health bar for a while, which makes the fight a lot harder. However, Malekith also doesn't have a lot of health, so does balance things out a bit. I would rather the Beast Clergyman and Malekith both had a full health bar and it is the same with a few other bosses. They are really fun to fight, but it's over way too quickly as they have that smaller health bar. Malekith is a really cool fight, and as I said, I have more of a bias for him. I would say there's ones that have better mechanics or better spectacle lower in the ranking, but I love his design and how he behaves in the second phase, so he goes into the S tier for me. If you asked me even as recently as a few months ago where Mohg would be in this list, I would say probably somewhere in the A tier. I used to think Mohg was criminally overrated, as I really disliked how he would spread the fire across the arena in the second phase. I thought it was just a bit too excessive, but now after fighting him a lot more, especially being forced to for the DLC, he is easily one of my favourite FromSoft bosses. Mohg is just so cool, and the whole Mohgwyn Palace area looks incredible. Mohg has a really great moveset, cool combos, flame attacks, slams, etc. It is so satisfying fighting him and is just a blast. He then has his phase transition where he steals your health bar and gains some health to his. He does this 3 times and regains up to like 70% health. You can get a crystal tier to negate this, which was handy, as well as Mohg's Shackle where you can stun him for like 5 seconds. His second phase introduces more flame attacks where he covers the arena in fire that causes blood loss. I do still think it's a bit much, but the attacks can be dodged easily and there's enough space to get away from the affected areas. I love his claw attacks that have a delayed explosion and also his spear charge. It's just overall an amazing boss that only took me until recently to finally understand what all the hype was about. Mohg easily goes into the S tier, however there is one other boss that is even better than Mohg. Messmer is easily the best boss in Elden Ring, and absolutely a contender for the best boss in all of FromSoft's games. Messmer is really cool aesthetically, but the fight is amazing mechanically. His combos are fun and the timings are really good. Some are delayed and some are very quick. He has large attacks where he will do multiple spear attacks and can end with an AoE that does have a delayed roll, but if you dodge it, it will leave him open for a good amount of time. Messmer is aggressive, but not overly so like a Radahn or Bale. He hits hard, but not an insane amount. The biggest problem with Messmer is that he doesn't have enough health. It's like with Midra, where there is this amazing fight that you just want to last longer. His phase transition is great, revealing the serpents, and the second phase is just so good. He has many new serpent attacks that are all fair. He still has his old combos, but can introduce the snake attacks during them. And he also has his massive attack where he spawns multiple snakes. However, you can dodge them very consistently if you get the timing down. Messmer is a really fun fight and really fair, which is not common to say in the DLC. The spectacle is there, the moveset is amazing, and his aggression is just right. When the biggest problem is that the fight doesn't last long enough, you know you've got a great boss. Messmer goes straight to the top of S tier. So guys, that is my ranking of all the remembrance bosses in Elden Ring. Please let me know what changes you would make and your opinions on the bosses below. And if you could like and subscribe, that would mean so much as well. Thanks so much guys, and I'll see you in the next one.